This is my story, a confession I never thought I'd tell. I still remember that morning, the one that started it all. The air in our kitchen was calm, maybe too calm, like the silence before a storm you never see coming. I was sitting across from my husband, Ethan, while pretending to read the newspaper. He was sipping his coffee quietly, and our daughter, Lily, was scrolling on her phone beside him. 5 years of marriage. That's how long Ethan and I had been together. 5 years since he entered my life, after I'd escaped my nightmare of a marriage with Daniel, my ex-husband. Daniel was abusive, controlling, and angry. He'd drink and hit me until the day I found the courage to leave. When Ethan came along, he was everything Daniel wasn't.
Kind.
Gentle. Patient. He made me feel safe again. But safety, it's strange. It comforts you at first, and then it makes you restless. I didn't realize when the peace of our marriage started to feel like a cage. Ethan was always busy, always logical, always calm, too calm. The spark was gone, and I couldn't even remember the last time I felt desired. And then, Daniel came back into my life. He called one evening, sober, apologetic, and sounding like a man trying to make things right. I should have hung up, but I didn't. It started with small talk, then memories, and before I knew it, we were meeting for coffee. He said he'd changed. He said he still loved me. And stupidly, I believed him. At first, I convinced myself it was harmless, just closure, just unfinished business. But every time we met, my guilt deepened. And yet, the part of me that missed the chaos, missed feeling wanted, kept pulling me back to him. Soon it became an affair, one I thought I could hide. But Ethan, he's not a fool. He noticed the late-night texts, the phone I kept close, the excuses. And still, he never confronted me. That silence was scarier than any fight could have been. Then came that morning, the one burned in my memory. I had decided to tell him everything. Not out of guilt, but because I thought if I confessed and asked for space, maybe we could make it open. In my twisted mind, that made it not cheating. I folded the newspaper and looked at him. "Ethan, I need to tell you something," I said softly. He looked up from his cup, eyes calm, too calm. "I'll be staying away for a while," I continued. "A month with Daniel. It's his birthday month and I want to be there for him." Even saying it felt ridiculous, but I said it anyway. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't even flinch. He just stared at me and said, almost mockingly, "Oh, really? To cook for him, clean for him, and sleep with him?" I froze. His voice was calm, but the words sliced through me like a knife. I tried to sound firm. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I told you so, it's not cheating." He nodded slowly.
Right.
"So if you tell me, it's not cheating." He leaned back in his chair, eyes cold and calculating. "All right then, Brenda, no, Sophia," he said my name in a tone that made my skin crawl. "Go enjoy your month. But sign a paper first." "A paper?" I frowned. "Yes," he said smoothly. "A separation agreement for 30 days. I won't be responsible for you or your daughter financially. You'll be free to do whatever you want. And so will I." I didn't think much of it. In my arrogance, I saw it as a chance, a month of freedom. The next day, we went to court. He had everything prepared. When the judge asked if I agreed, I smiled and said, "Yes, Your Honor." I felt powerful, untouchable. That evening, I packed my bags. I still remember how happy I felt. I actually thanked him. He just stood there, expression blank, and said, "Make sure you're happy. I'll do the same." That was the last normal sentence he ever said to me. Lily and I left that night for Daniel's place. It felt nostalgic at first, like slipping into an old memory. Daniel greeted me with a grin, pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. For the next few days, I convinced myself I'd made the right choice. Ethan was cold, distant, and boring. Daniel was wild, passionate, spontaneous. I told myself I deserved this, after all the pain I'd been through. But then, slowly, things began to shift. Daniel started drinking again. He became possessive, angry when I didn't answer his calls immediately. Lily started avoiding him, retreating to her room. And I began to feel the same fear I had once run from. I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. But before I could even process that, my world turned upside down. It started with a phone call. Ethan didn't usually call me, but that night he did. I picked up immediately. "Hello."
His voice was calm. Too calm.
"I'm taking care of my desires," he said, then hung up. I didn't understand what he meant, not until the next morning. When I checked my bank account, the balance was zero. My daughter's college fund?
Gone.
Even the joint account? Empty. I panicked, called him again and again, but he never answered. I realized it wasn't an accident. He'd planned it. Every bit of it. That paper I signed, it wasn't freedom. It was a trap. He had legally freed himself from me, from our marriage, from every financial tie. And now he had taken everything. The man I thought was calm and weak had just outplayed me in ways I couldn't even imagine. I still remember my daughter crying that night. "Mom, what are we going to do? My college money is gone." I didn't have an answer. All I could say was, "We'll fix this." But deep down I knew there was no fixing this. He was gone. And so was everything else. As I sat there, in a house that didn't even feel safe anymore, holding the phone that wouldn't stop ringing with insufficient balance messages, I realized something horrifying. Ethan had taken his revenge. And it had only just begun. The next few days after Ethan's phone call were chaos. I woke up each morning hoping it was all a mistake, that maybe there was some technical glitch, or maybe Ethan would come to his senses and transfer the money back. But the balance stayed the same, zero. The reality hit me like a slow, burning fever. He had taken everything, every dollar, every bit of stability I had ever known. My daughter, Lily, kept asking the same questions over and over. "Mom, did you call him? What did he say? When will he fix this?" And every time, my answers got weaker. "He's angry, he just needs time. He wouldn't do this to us forever. He loves me, he used to love me." But even as I said the words, they sounded hollow. Daniel started noticing the tension. One evening, while he was sipping beer on the couch, he asked casually, "So, you're broke?" I hated the way he said it, amused, almost relieved. I clenched my fists. "He emptied the joint account. I'm sure it's illegal." He laughed. "Illegal? You signed the paper, remember?" His words made my stomach twist. The paper? That stupid document Ethan had made me sign before I left. The one I never bothered to read properly because I was too busy thinking about my freedom. I dug through my bag and found it, the 30-day separation agreement. Reading it now felt like a punch to the chest. It clearly said that during the separation period, neither spouse holds any financial or emotional obligation toward the other. In simple terms, I had willingly given up every right I had. And Ethan had known exactly what he was doing. I felt a wave of shame and fear crash over me. I called him again, hands trembling. This time, he actually picked up. "Ethan, what have you done?" I shouted. He was calm, that same terrifying calm. "Just following the agreement you signed, Sophia. Remember? You wanted to take care of your desires. I'm taking care of mine. You can't just take our money," I screamed. He chuckled softly. "It's my money. You never worked for it. I paid for everything, your daughter's car, her college fund, the bills, the rent. So I just took back what's mine." His words shattered something inside me. Before I could say anything more, he hung up. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. I wanted to hate him, but a part of me couldn't. Because deep down, I knew I had started this war. Days passed. Then one morning, a message popped up on my phone. It was from my bank, a transaction alert showing a withdrawal of $50,000 from the college fund. The reference line read, "Jamaica Resort, Platinum Package." I stared at it in disbelief. He had taken my daughter's college fund and gone on vacation. Lily saw it too. Her face turned red, her eyes full of tears. "He took my future to go on a trip?" she yelled. I didn't even have the strength to argue. When I finally gathered the courage to call again, he answered on the second ring. "Ethan, please," I said, voice breaking. He sighed deeply, almost bored. Can't talk right now. I'm at the beach. Sun's amazing here. Ethan, stop it. You're being cruel. Cruel, he repeated. You cheated on me with your abusive ex, Sophia. You humiliated me in my own house, and now you call me cruel? I opened my mouth to speak, but he continued. You said it's not cheating if you tell me. So I told you too. I'm on vacation with a woman who doesn't lie to me. Enjoy your month. And then the call disconnected. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking. My daughter knelt beside me, whispering, Mom, what's happening? But I couldn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't even know who my husband really was anymore. The man who once couldn't even raise his voice was now destroying me with precision, legally, financially, emotionally. And the worst part? He was doing it all without breaking a single law. Daniel wasn't helping either. He'd started drinking more, muttering things like, Guess you're fancy, husband finally grew a spine. When I snapped at him one night, he hit me. Just once. But it was enough to remind me who he truly was. The man I had run away from. I realized the horror of my choices. I had left a man who loved me for a man who only knew how to hurt me. And now, even the safety net I once had was gone. 2 weeks later, the doorbell rang. A man in a suit stood there, holding a brown envelope. Are you Mrs. Sophia Turner? He asked. Yes, I said, my heart pounding. He handed me the envelope. You've been served. Then he stepped back, took a picture of me holding the papers, and walked away without another word. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside were divorce papers. And then I saw them, the photographs. Pictures of me with Daniel. In his bedroom. In his living room. Dates, times, locations, everything. Every secret moment I thought was hidden was there, staring back at me. He had known all along. I fell to my knees, sobbing. How long had he known? How long had he been watching, collecting, waiting? My daughter rushed over, her face pale as she looked at the pictures. Oh my God. Mom. He knew everything. My phone buzzed. It was Ethan. I picked up with shaking hands. Ethan, please stop this. Please.
He didn't yell.
He just said quietly, You made your bed, Sophia. I'm just making sure you sleep in it. I tried to apologize, but my voice broke. You could have stopped me. I could have, he said. But you wouldn't have listened. You never do. I could hear the finality in his tone. And then, almost mockingly, he added, By the way, check the joint account again. I left a small gift. I immediately opened my banking app. $1,000 remained. Barely enough to pay rent. A gift. That was his way of saying goodbye. The following days were a blur of panic and humiliation. Daniel became unbearable, shouting, drinking, blaming me for everything. When I refused to give him money, he threw me out of his apartment. I stood on the sidewalk with Lily, holding a single suitcase and the weight of every bad decision I had ever made. My phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. Court hearing in 2 days. Be on time. Ethan's lawyer. I didn't sleep that night. In court, Ethan looked peaceful, like a man who had finally found closure. I wanted to scream, to beg, to tell the judge that I never meant for things to go this far. But Ethan's lawyer was cold and prepared. He presented everything, the pictures, the separation agreement, the timestamps. When the judge asked if I had reviewed the document before signing, I nodded miserably. The judge sighed. Then there's not much I can do. You gave him permission to separate and waived financial support. Ethan didn't even look at me. When it was all over, the judge granted the divorce under adultery. As we were leaving, I finally mustered the courage to whisper, Why did you do all this? He turned to me, his expression unreadable. Because you made me watch you destroy what I built. Now, I'm just watching you live in it. He walked away. And that was the last time I saw him. A week later, I heard he had moved to Thailand. Apparently, he had taken a job there, maybe even started a new life. Meanwhile, I was left to pick up the broken pieces of mine. No money, no home, no man. Just me and a daughter who could barely look at me without anger in her eyes. That night, as I lay on the couch of a friend's tiny apartment, I replayed everything in my head, every mistake, every lie, every moment I thought I was right. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't the victim. I was the villain in my own story. After the divorce, life didn't fall apart overnight. It rotted slowly, like a wound that never heals and starts to smell of everything you've ruined. The court hearing had ended weeks ago, but its echoes were still inside me. Every word, every calm sentence from Ethan replayed in my head like punishment. You made your bed, Sophia. I'm just making sure you sleep in it. And now I was on a torn mattress in a one-room flat that smelled of damp clothes and regret. Lily barely spoke to me anymore. She used to be the sunshine of my world, loud, playful, stubborn, but now she looked at me like I was a stranger. One night, as we sat in silence eating instant noodles, she finally said it. You destroyed everything, Mom. Her voice didn't crack. Mine did. I know, I whispered, tears burning behind my eyes. I'm sorry. But sorry doesn't refill a bank account. Sorry doesn't bring back trust. Sorry doesn't rebuild a life you chose to burn. She left the table without another word. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I went from a loving home to this emptiness. The answer was simple. I traded loyalty for thrill. And thrill never stays. It only destroys. A month after the divorce, I heard that Ethan had left the country. Thailand, someone said. Apparently, he'd accepted a business partnership there. I imagined him walking on a beach somewhere, peaceful, free, everything I used to be before I made my choices. For a moment, I hated him for moving on so easily. Then I hated myself for expecting him not to. Because, why wouldn't he? He'd lost a wife who betrayed him and gained his peace in return. When the rent got too high, I had no choice but to call Daniel again. It was humiliating. He was the reason my first marriage collapsed, and yet I found myself back at his doorstep, holding my daughter's hand, asking for shelter. He looked at me with a smug grin, the same old arrogance. Didn't think you'd be crawling back, he said, half laughing. I wanted to walk away, but I had nowhere else to go. That first week he acted kind, almost tender. He said he'd changed, that he'd take care of us. But by the second week, the beer bottles were back. By the third, so were the slaps. Every bruise reminded me of the night I left him years ago. Every scream reminded me of the man I lost, the one who would have never raised his hand, never yelled, never made me cry. I thought I could endure it, but Lily couldn't. One night, she shouted at him, told him to stop touching me. He hit her. That was the last straw. We left in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack, some cash I'd borrowed, and the guilt that clung to me like a shadow. I tried to find work, cleaning jobs, small shops, anything. But with no experience and no confidence, every door felt heavier than the last. Sometimes, when I walked past coffee shops, I'd see couples laughing together. Women who still looked loved, men who still looked proud, and I'd wonder, do they even know how fragile all of it is? Love is like glass. You think it's strong until one mistake shatters it. And once it breaks, no amount of apologies can make it whole again. Weeks turned into months. We found a small room in an old building shared with another woman and her 2 kids. It wasn't much, a leaking ceiling, a rusted stove, a thin mattress on the floor, but it was safe. Every night, before sleeping, I'd stare at the window and think about Ethan. Did he ever think of me? Did he ever regret what he did? The truth was, I didn't deserve even that thought. He gave me love. I gave him betrayal. He gave me security. I gave him humiliation. He gave me peace. I gave him pain. And still, when he finally gave me nothing, I called it cruelty. Now I understood what he meant by equal and opposite reaction. His revenge wasn't just about money or documents. It was about reflection, making me live with the same emptiness I once left him with. A few months later, I received an email. It was from Ethan's lawyer. He'd finalized all the settlements, and one line stood out. Mr. Turner has donated the remaining funds from the joint account to a women's abuse recovery foundation in your city, in your name. For a minute, I couldn't breathe. He had turned my betrayal into someone else's rescue. That was Ethan, calm, poetic, and painfully just. I broke down crying. Not because of what he'd done, but because even after everything, he still chose kindness over hatred. And that kindness hurt more than any revenge ever could. Lily slowly started forgiving me, piece by piece. She found a scholarship program that helped her get back into college. She worked part-time at a cafe, and I took a job cleaning offices. It wasn't the life I once had, but maybe it was the one I needed, to rebuild myself not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a woman who finally saw her reflection clearly. Sometimes I'd pass by the park where Ethan and I first met. I'd sit on the same bench and close my eyes. In my mind, I could still hear his laugh, the way he'd call my name softly when we were happy, before lies turned it all to ash. I used to think love was something you find. Now I know it's something you protect. And when you fail to do that, love doesn't die. It leaves you, quietly, with all the memories you didn't deserve to keep. A year later, I heard he'd gotten married again, to a woman who worked at the firm he joined overseas. She looked peaceful in the pictures I saw online. And so did he. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or envy. I felt peace. Because maybe, just maybe, he had finally found the happiness I took from him. Now, when I wake up every morning in my small apartment, I don't rush to check my phone. I make tea, watch the sunlight hit the walls, and remind myself of one thing. Regret isn't punishment, it's education. Pain isn't revenge, it's balance. And karma isn't cruel. It's just patient. I still wear the small silver ring he gave me on our 3rd anniversary. Not because I want him back, but because it reminds me of the woman I should have been. Every scratch on it tells a story. Every shine reminds me that once, I had everything, and that it was me who let it slip away. If I could tell my younger self one thing, I'd say this. Don't mistake boredom for unhappiness. Don't mistake freedom for love. And never, ever play games with a heart that only wanted to protect you. Sometimes, I write letters to Ethan that I'll never send. In one of them, I wrote, "You were right, Ethan. For every action, there truly is an equal and opposite reaction. You gave me love. I gave you pain. You gave me silence. I found regret. And now, in this silence, I've finally found forgiveness, not from you, but from myself."